Hello there and welcome. In the previous episode, we started creating our skill system. So now we have this skills panel and we can basically unlock these perks when we have enough perk points. But at this point, we still cannot actually gain XP and level up. And we also don't have any kind of effects for these perks. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. So how do we level up woodcutting? Well, it's kind of obvious by cutting trees. So we need to understand where exactly in our code, in our game, we are cutting trees. And then we simply need to have a reference to this skill and level up the XP, or basically raise the XP and then level up. Now at this point, we only cut trees using our axe. You can have more tools, but at this point we only have our axe. So if we go into resources, we have our axe model, and here we have this equipable item script. This should have been a more generic script that goes on different tools, but I think we only have it on our axe. But you can go to any kind of script that sits on your axe. And we have this method over here, get hit. So when we hit a tree, then we actually call this method, this get hit, that is inside the choppable tree component. So it will be a much better idea to level up the woodcutting skill when we actually hit a tree and not inside this axe method, because maybe you're going to have other tools. Maybe you're going to have a chainsaw or maybe different kinds of axes. So instead of adding logic into each one of these models or tools, you can actually do this inside the choppable tree and it will be much easier to manage later. So we're going to control and click on this get hit method, and this is inside of our choppable tree script. And here, when we hit the tree, we're going to level up the woodcutting skill. But the problem is that we currently don't have a way to access our skills. Sure, we can access the skill manager because it's a singleton, but the skill manager doesn't have any kind of references to the different skills. It does have a reference to the skill UI panel, but this is just a game object. This is just to enable it and disable it. We don't have specific skills here. So we need to create some kind of way to reach each of these skills so we can level them up, right? Because each skill will have this script and will have this add XP method. But in order to access this, we need some kind of an adapter or a way to access these skills. So before we can call this, we need to add some logic into our skill manager. So over here, let's just add a header. And we're going to have a public skill UI wood cutting cutting skill. And this will be a plain reference to our woodcutting skill. Now, when you're going to add more and more skills, you can simply duplicate this and add other skills as well. But we only have this woodcutting skill at this point. We can also create some kind of constant for the XP gained. So we can say public float XP gain. And we can say that it's 5 XP. Now again, you can set this in the inspector, or this can be some kind of value in the code. So you can also make it private. It doesn't really matter. But the idea is that we have some kind of hard-coded value for the XP gained. And we also have a reference to the wood cutting skill. Another thing we want to do is to create an enum for all of the skills, because if we call the skill manager from our choppable tree, we want to search for a specific skill. So we can basically just reference this, but it's going to be much easier to have an enum for each skill. And then we can simply say public enum skill And instead of working with strings, for example, looking for a string, we can just create this enum. And then we're going to use this to look for our skill. Now, we need a way to call the logic from this singleton, because here we can access our singleton, and then we can also access this woodcutting skill, and then we can access this add XP method, but it's going to be not very efficient and it can cause us a lot of confusion. So instead, we're going to create a method inside of this skill manager that will also be called each time we want to add XP to a skill. So we're going to have this public void add XP to skill, and we're simply going to provide the skill as this enum instead of providing some kind of string that can be kind of messy. So skill, and also a float for the amount of XP we want to increase. Now we also set some kind of default value because maybe we don't want to use a manual or provide a manual amount of XP. Maybe we want to use our constants to increase the XP. So we have this default value. So if we don't provide this parameter or this argument, then it's simply going to use this thing over here, okay? So inside, we're simply going to create a switch. And based on the skill that we're going to look for, we're going to have different cases. So if the skill that we provided is woodcutting, then we're simply going to take the woodcutting reference and we're going to call this addXP method, and we're going to provide some XP. Now we can provide this amount, but what if we don't want to provide a manual amount? We simply want to add this constant. We can do this, right? And then we don't need to provide any kind of amount. We simply provide this skill. And as soon as we provide this skill, it's also going to add 5 XP using this constant. So now all we need to do over here is simply say skill manager instance add XP to skill, and all we need to do is add the skill that we want to level up. So wood cutting skill. And this will automatically add XP to this skill. But at this point, we're not providing manual amounts of XP because we know that each time we hit a tree, we want the same amount of XP. So it will simply add this constant, which is 5 XP. And obviously you can see that this is not ideal for all skills. So we cannot use this for all the different skills and all the different sub-skills. This will only work when we have a specific action, for example, hitting a tree. Okay, so each time we hit a tree, we want to add 5 XP. And of course, we can also do this. We can provide 5 XP like this. And over here, instead of providing this, we're simply going to provide the amount. We can do this as well. I think it's just a bit more easy to have different constants because then you're going to have a list of all the different XP you gain for different actions instead of looking for it here and in other places, right? So it's much cleaner this way. But you can obviously add it manually like this from the actual action. Now, what if we also want to add XP when we actually cut down the tree completely, right? Because this will happen for each hit. But what if we want to add XP when the tree is actually cut down? We can simply take this and we can provide a different value. For example, 20 XP. Maybe we want it to be a bit bigger. So we want to add 20 XP when the tree falls down. And obviously, if we don't provide this, it will still go here and it will at this point it will add 0, but we can use this, or maybe we can create another constant, gain XP per tree fall. And then use this. But then how will we know which one we are using, right? So for this, we can create some kind of sub-skill and then simply provide the sub-skill. Now it's up to you. If you don't want to overcomplicate this, you can simply add a manual amount here, and then add 20 here. But I think it's just a bit messy because you're going to have a lot of these all over your code. And if you want to change the XP gained, you will have to go to all of these places because this is hard-coded, right? It's much cleaner when you have constants in the same place with all the different values. So how do we actually provide these constants without manually providing the XP? For this, we can do something else. For example, we can change this method a bit, and then we can simply say if the skill is woodcutting, but then inside we're going to check if the amount was not provided, right? So if it's 0, it means that the amount was not provided. And in this case, we know that we want to manually add some XP. So if it's not 0, it means that we added some XP manually and we want to do this. Else, if this is 0, it means that we did not provide anything, and then we want to use the woodcutting skill and add XP. And we're simply going to provide XP gained per tree hit. And obviously we also need to break here. Or like this. Now, again, it means that if we provide a value here, it will override this constant and it will simply add the manual XP. But if we don't provide anything, then it will simply see woodcutting and it will use this. Now, what about the other one? What about this one, right? Because here we also may want to do this. We want to add a different amount of XP, but not using this manual XP. So how will this work? For this, we can create another enum that will be some kind of sub-skill, or not sub-skill, but XP source. So how do we actually gain the XP? Now again, this may look a bit more complex for you. Maybe you just want to provide the amount, you don't want all of this, but I think that this is a bit more generic because later you're going to have many more skills. You can pass everything manually, but you can also have some kind of a more organized way. So we can have this XP source that will simply allow us to know how do we gain XP. We're going to have none, but we can also have woodcutting, tree hit, and we can actually add values to enums. I don't know if you know this, but we can add values to enums. So for example, we add XP to these actual enums, and then we're simply going to use the enums, and we can also use their own values. So then we don't need to even use these constants. And the way we do this is by simply, let's just remove these because we don't need them. But now we're simply going to provide the skill, but also the XP source and an optional amount. Now, the source will also be optional, so we can simply provide none if we don't provide any source. Because maybe we want to provide an amount and we don't want to provide a source. So we have this default value that will be none. But then inside the skill, if it's woodcutting and if source is none, then we're simply going to add the amount, right? Because if we don't have any source, then we simply add the amount. Else, so if we do have a source, we're simply going to take the source and we're going to convert it into an int. And by converting this source into an int, it will take this value from the enum. So in our example, over here, instead of manually passing the different XP, we can simply say that the source will be tree hit. And here, the source will be tree fall. So we don't need to provide any kind of XP because it will automatically know how much XP should it increase. Here we hit the tree, here the tree is falling. So we simply provide the source, we provide the skill, and then the skill manager will add the XP automatically using this, and we don't need all of this. Now again, all of these are suggestions. You can use simpler ways, you can simply provide the XP without the source, you can simply provide the skill and it will add some XP to the skill. It really depends on what you want to do, but I think that providing hard-coded XP here is not a good idea. Sometimes you will want to do this, especially when you have different kinds of enemies and you want to provide the XP from the enemy script into this manager, so you will provide the amount of XP. But other times you just want to provide the skill and then it will automatically know how much to increase. Now, the reason you also see all of this and it's rather long, it's just because our enums are nested inside of the skill manager. We can obviously take them out over here and now everything will still work. But here you don't need to do this. You can simply remove the skill manager. So it will be a bit shorter, okay, and a bit nicer. So this is the way we're going to increase these skills. Now at this point, this should work. When we hit a tree, we're going to gain 5 XP, and when we chop down the tree entirely, we're going to get another 20. And this is basically the way we are going to level up this woodcutting skill. Now, I'm not going to show you more skills. I'm not going to create another skill and another one because there's no point, right? You're going to have your own skills. They can be, you can have many more skills, combat and maybe survival or resource gathering. You can even have skills for each kind of weapon. You can level up your bow or level up your sword skills. So you can have a lot of them, and it's really not something I can show you. I cannot show you all of them, but the logic is kind of simple. You simply go to the place that the skill should increase. If it's a bow or a sword, you go to the point where you actually hit an animal. And then when you hit this animal, you're going to call this and you're going to provide the sword skill. And you can provide manual XP, or maybe you want to have a source for this specific thing. Again, if it's on some kind of animal, then you can have some kind of constant XP gained for this animal or XP gained for this enemy. And then you're simply going to provide it here. So each enemy will give you different amount of XP. You can make it even more complicated. For example, depending on your level, you're going to get other amounts of XP, although your skill requirement will still grow each time, so you can still provide the same amount of XP and it will simply take you more time to level up. So again, I'm not going to show more examples of how to increase XP for different skills. You simply need to decide which kind of skills you want and how to level them up, and then simply call the skill manager, provide the skill, provide the XP, or create some kind of XP source that will have its own value over here, okay? So it's really up to you. Again, a simple example, if you want to increase swimming, then each time you enter or swim in the water, you can create some kind of timer in your swimming system, and every 5 seconds that you're swimming, you're going to call this line and you're going to increase the swimming skill. Or maybe each time, maybe you want to have some kind of skill for crafting. So in your crafting system, each time you craft an item, you're going to call this line and you're going to increase the crafting skill. Okay, so it's very, very simple, and I think there's no problem to do this for different kinds of skills. Now that we can level up our skills, we also want to apply some effects for our perks, okay? First, let's just see that it's working, okay? We should get 5 XP when we hit the tree, and we should get 20 XP when the tree is falling. Now, let's just increase this a bit so it will be faster to level up. Let's say we gain 20 XP when we hit the tree, and maybe 50 when the tree is falling, okay? So this is just for testing. Obviously, you can play around with these values. So now we're going to disable this panel, but we do need to have a reference to our skill, because inside of the skill manager, we added this reference for the woodcutting skill. So let's just go to the panel and drag this skill. You can also rename this, because this will be your woodcutting skill. And you may have more skills later, right? You can duplicate this and you can have more skills, so you should rename them. But we only have this one. So you simply take your woodcutting skill and you drag it over here. And now let's close this panel and let's try to level up our skill. So as you can see, we have 0 on this skill. I also removed all the perk points, and we cannot unlock these perks because we don't have any perk points. Now we want to start leveling up this skill. So for this, we need to craft an axe because we don't have an axe. And I'm going to craft an axe. I'm going to equip it, and we're going to start chopping down trees. Now you can see that we have 0 XP over here, and the level is 0, but the first time I hit the tree, we got 20 XP. The second time we have 40, 60, 80, and this time when I hit the tree, it will go to 100, and we're going to level up and we're going to gain a perk point. You can also see the slider goes up. So now we gained a level, we gained a perk point, and we are at a new level. And now we can simply continue leveling up. Now, again, you can add some UI. Maybe each time you hit the tree, there will be some kind of small UI popping up showing you that you leveled up. Or maybe you want to show a UI when you level up an entire level. So maybe on the side here at the corner, you're going to have some kind of pop-up that is going to show you that you leveled up your woodcutting skill. You can do whatever you want. Now, when we cut it down completely, it should increase about 50 points. and then we should go to level 2. Now we are at level 2 and we have some more XP and we have 2 perk points and we can unlock these perks, although we still don't have any kind of effects for these perks. But you can see that everything is working, okay? So it's very simple to level up our skills right now. So in order to add some effects to our perks, we need to first understand what are the actual effects. This is just some random perks that I created. We have Quick Chop, we have Efficient Strikes, and we have Durability Saver. And we can see some kind of description. So we have this Quick Chop, and you can see from the description, it simply means that we get some boost to our cutting speed, okay? So our speed will be faster. Then we have this perk, and this will reduce the stamina, and the other perk will reduce the durability, or basically prevent the weapon from degrading faster. So again, you can create any kind of perks and decide on their effects, but this is what I decided for this woodcutting skill. Obviously, you can have more perks, you can have a lot of perks, but I only have 3 just for some examples. So this one, we need to have some kind of effect to increase the cutting speed. Now, the cutting speed doesn't mean that the axe will swing faster. It simply means that the tree will be cut faster. So for this, we need to go to the place we actually hit the tree, okay? This place over here inside the choppable tree. And each time we hit the tree, we have this logic here that we remove 1 hit point from the tree held. And if we go to our trees, let's find the trees. We can see that the choppable tree has 10 max health. It means that it will take us 10 hits to chop down this tree, right? Because it has a max health of 10, but we hit it 1 each time. So all we need to do is modify this value based on the skill or based on the perks, right? But still, we cannot know if the perk is unlocked from the skill manager. We don't have access to our perks. Sure, we can have access to the woodcutting skill, but even here, we don't have access to the actual perks. The perks themselves do have this unlocked bool, but we don't have access to them from the skill UI script. So again, we need to add some kind of adapter, some kind of way to reach and look for these perks. So first of all, in order to make it much easier, we want to create an enum for every kind of perk because it will be much easier to look for these perks, right? Over here, you want to check if this perk is unlocked, then change the value. But how will we look for this perk? We're going to provide a string. Well, that's not efficient because we can have a typo or something. So instead, we're going to have a public enum of skill perk or just perk. And here we're going to have all the perks: woodcutting, quick chop, woodcutting, efficient strikes, and woodcutting durability saver. Okay, and now it will be much easier to look for these perks. The next thing we want to do is to create some kind of method to check if these perks are unlocked. So over here, we're going to have a method, public bool, check if perk is unlocked, and we're going to provide a perk simply by providing this enum. Then inside, we're going to have a switch, and we're going to check what is the perk we're looking for. And if the perk is quick chop, then we're simply going to return another method, find perk in skill. And we need to provide the skill, and we have a reference here to the skill, and we also want to provide the perk itself, okay? So this is a method that will go and look for this perk inside of this skill. Then obviously we are going to have cases for the rest. For example, woodcutting efficient strikes, and also woodcutting durability saver. And at the end, we're going to have our default case, just if none of them are executed. Now we're going to generate this method over here, and we're simply going to provide a skill, and we're going to provide a perk, okay? And it will look for this perk inside of this skill. So this is also rather easy. For each perk button, PB in skill perks, if PB type is the same as perk, then return PB unlocked. And if it doesn't find anything, then we're going to return false. Now, don't worry, we don't have this and we still don't have this. Not get type, but type. We don't have both of them, that's why it's red. We're going to add them. But just understand the logic. We're going to have an list or an array of perks inside of this skill, and then it's going to loop over all of these perks, and it's going to look for the perk type. And we're also going to have a type on the perk, and if this is the same as the perk we're looking for, it's going to return the state of the perk, okay? Otherwise, it's going to return false. So now we need to take care of this. So inside of our skill UI, we're going to have a list of perk buttons. We're going to name it perks, okay? And also, so now it's going to be fixed, but we also need to add a type to our perk button. So inside of the perk button, we're going to have a public skill perk type. Now this is not going to be allowed because we don't have this as public. So we're going to take this out again here outside of the class. And now this will be available, okay? So each perk button will have its own type. The type of this current perk. And this way we can compare between the perk that we're looking for and the perk that is this perk button, okay? So now here in the skill manager, we're going to loop over all the buttons inside the skill. And if this button type is the same as the perk, we're going to return the state either if it's unlocked or maybe it's still locked. And this way we can know if the perk is locked or not. Now, obviously, we save everything before we continue because we need to add these perks to the skill. So before I told you that we don't need the references, but now we do need references. So inside of our player skills UI panel, we can disable it, but just click on the skill woodcutting, and now we need a reference to all of the perks inside of this list. So simply take each one of the perks and drag all of the perks one by one into this list, okay? Because each skill should have a reference to its own perks. And then it's going to loop over them and look for the state of the perk. Obviously, each perk has also the type, so the quick chop should be quick chop, the efficient strikes should be efficient strikes, and the durability saver will be durability saver. And obviously when we unlock them, then this bool will change and we can know the state of the perk. So now to actually apply these effects, we will go back to our choppable tree. And here, instead of reducing 1 HP each time we hit the tree, we're going to check if the perk is unlocked. If skill manager instance check if perk is unlocked, quick chop, if this perk is unlocked, we're going to reduce 2, else we're going to reduce 1. Okay, so it means that we're going to chop down trees much faster because now we're going to reduce more HP. We have 10 in total, so before it took us 10 hits, but if this perk will be unlocked, it's going to take us much less time to cut down this tree. So that's why this perk is actually effective and we can do this. Obviously, you can also add constants if you don't want this. For example, private, let's say int HP per hit, and then HP per hit with quick chop. Now again, this is just so you are going to have everything here, and then you can use these. But you don't have to use them. You can simply hard code the values here. It's really up to you, okay? But this is how we apply effects for the perks. We simply check if the perk is unlocked, and then we do a different value instead of the original value. That's it. And this is the same logic for all the other perks. So if we save everything, so now we need to craft this axe again. So as you can see, it will only hit it with 1 HP, but now when we level up to the first level, we're going to have 1 perk point and we can unlock this perk. Okay, so now we have this 1 perk point, and now I can basically unlock this, and you're going to see that the hits will be much more significant. And now it will be much easier to chop down trees. So we actually added some effect to this perk. Now we do the same thing for the rest of them. The next one is reducing the stamina. Now we don't have stamina, we have calories, which is basically just like stamina, and we need to find a place where we do this. If I remember correctly, we're doing this here inside the same get hit method. We are reducing calories. So we do the same thing. If, let's just comment this out. If skill manager instance check perk unlocked, but this time we want to look for the efficient strikes perk. If it's unlocked, then we're going to call this, else we're going to call this, but instead of reducing calories spent chopping, which is this value we had before, and this should also be a const, instead of this, we can simply multiply it by half. And it means that it's going to reduce less calories. So if this was 20, then this will be 10. Or you can simply say that this will reduce 20 and this will reduce 10. You can hard code it, you can create another constant, and why this is not constant, const const, and also here, const, const. Calories per hit, let's say 20, and then calories per hit with efficient strikes. Obviously, you can have more perks that will make it even easier, right? So you can have this perk, but then you can have another perk, maybe that we still did not come up with, efficient strikes, advanced, and then here we're going to reduce 10, but here we're going to reduce 5. So you can see that each perk will make it much easier and we're going to spend less calories. Also here, you can have another quick chop or maybe something else like super chop, and this will make it even faster, right? So you can have many different kinds of perks that will increase everything, but we only have these ones, and now we can use this and calories with efficient strikes. Okay, again, very, very straightforward and very, very simple. And we're adding the XP here, and we are reducing calories. You can set this to be first because maybe it doesn't really matter. Eventually it affects the perks themselves. So if we unlock the perk, it's really not related to the XP itself. Now for the durability, we are doing this not here, but in the actual axe. So inside the equipable item, when we hit something, which is not only a tree, then we have this durability that we reduce, right? We have this durability reduce method. So here again, we can do the same thing. If skill manager instance check perk unlocked, durability saver. If this perk is unlocked, we should reduce less durability points, right? So we can use the reduction rate and simply reduce 5 out of it because the durability reduction rate is 20. So this will reduce 20 from our axe, and this will reduce 15. Or again, you can create constants. Durability reduction rate, and durability reduction rate perk. I think that 20 is too much, maybe 1, and this will be like half. Or maybe 2, and this will be 1. Obviously, we can make all of this caps lock because it should be visible this way. And then we can use this. So now it's much cleaner and we have these constants for the different values. If the perk is unlocked, we're going to reduce this. If it's not unlocked, we're going to reduce the normal rate. Obviously, if you have a different kind of perk that should affect the durability, maybe you have a super durability saver, then you can simply check and then do an else if. And the smaller one should be the next one, but the bigger one should be here. So maybe this one will be super durability saver, and we first check if this one is unlocked. And if this one is unlocked, then we're going to reduce the rate for the super one. But if this one is not unlocked, we're going to check if this one is unlocked, and then we're going to reduce the other one. And if both of them are not unlocked, we're going to reduce the normal rate. Okay, so if you have several perks that affect the same stat, so you can do this, but we only have this one over here. And now all of this should work. We should spend less calories. We should basically degrade our axe much slower. And at this point, you should simply think about your own skills, about the perks they will have, and about the effects. Obviously, this is just a description for the player, but you should know what is the effect and then look for the place in your code where the effect is going to be applied, right? If you have some kind of sword skill, so when you increase or unlock the perk that will maybe raise the power for the sword, then you simply go to your sword and you increase the damage for the sword, right? And we don't have a sword. Let me see. Resources. We have the bow, right? And then inside the bow we have shooting force, we have the arrow. I think the damage is on the arrow. Yes, the damage is on the arrow. But again, you can go to this arrow script, and here, when you apply the arrow damage, you can do the same thing. If skill manager, bow skill manager instance, check if perk is unlocked. If the super bow perk or is unlocked, then you're going to have a higher damage, or maybe you have a constant for a different damage. Else you're going to simply apply the normal damage, right? So it's very simple. It's the same way with all the different perks and the different skills. There's nothing complicated about this. I just cannot possibly show you all the different skills and all the different variations, right? If you have a swimming system like we have, but you have a limited amount of time underwater, you can have a perk that expands this time, and then you're going to have more time. So in your swimming system, you simply add more time you can spend underwater, and then you check if this perk is unlocked. Then you can spend 10 seconds underwater. If the perk is not unlocked, then you can spend 5 seconds, right? So again, you need to find the places in the code. You need to decide exactly what the skills and the perks are doing and apply the logic. So that's all for our skill system. I think it's rather nice. It's modular. You can add more skills. You can have one general leveling system with general perks. You don't have to have different skills. And then you can have perks. You can have many perks. You can have a limited amount of perks. You can do whatever you want. You can then level up these perks, level up these skills, and unlock the perks. So it's really up to you. So that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching. If you're still not a subscriber, please subscribe. It will support me a lot. You can also leave a like or a comment. And I'll see you next time.